Okay, today I'd like to talk about using tritone substitutions in the left hand of the Stradella system. Might be a good idea to kind of do a quick review of a couple of things. The tritone substitution I want to deal with exclusively today is the one that includes the sharp 11. So let's discuss just a little bit of what a tritone is and what substitution means, and then that sharp 11 in particular. So a tritone is draws its name because it encompasses, it's an interval that encompasses 3 whole tones. So like if we put a sheet up here, you can see C to D is a whole tone, D to E is a whole tone, and E to F sharp is a whole tone. So it has to encompass 3 adjacent whole tones, and that interval is a tritone. And the substitution part is we can take a dominant chord, like a 5 chord, like in the key of C is G7 or G, but as a 7 chord, G7, that goes to 1. We can substitute, instead of using the G7, we can substitute with a chord that is a tritone higher than the dominant chord. So our G chord, if we go up a tritone, that tritone sound, it's a D flat. If we count up 3 whole tones from the root of our dominant chord, we get a D flat. And if we do the D flat 7, that can take the place of the G7, and you can hear it sounds nice. So the G7 going to C, but the cadence with the tritone substitution, it's a sound we've heard plenty of times. So that's a tritone substitution on the dominant chord. The one I again want to talk about is the one that has the sharp 11, because on the accordion it's unique in that it's exactly a carbon copy. So I think easiest thing is to look at a C7 chord. On the left hand in the Stradella system there's no fifth, so the C7 chord has the notes C, E, and B flat. If we add the F sharp, which is the 11th, I've kind of skipped that, haven't I? Maybe we should look at that for a second. The 11th, if you're not, the sharp 11, if you're not familiar with what that is, it's just you just count up the scale until you reach 11 and then you sharp it. So if you go up the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then you sharp it, that's an F sharp. And something not to get confused with, but something that makes this work so well, is that F sharp, that sharp 11, is also what we just discussed as the tritone. It's the same note. So here we have the sharp 11, and then our C7 chord. And can't. Or you can bring it down an octave, which is much easier. In the left hand then, if we do the C7 and we add an F sharp, and if we take it out and don't have it be a bass sound, that's the chord we're looking at. That's the chord, that's the kind of magic chord. I sometimes call it the wormhole chord, because it allows me to cover a lot of real estate in the left hand with a very small movement. It gets me from place to place very easily. So we look at let's take a look at those notes on some staff paper. C, E, F sharp, and B flat. Now, let's take the tritone that we're going to substitute here, and again, we count up from the C, the root of the C, up a tritone. We get that F sharp. Let's go up in our left hand, find the F sharp chord, and now look at the notes that are in that next to the C7 chord. We got, those are the chords in the F sharp. They would normally be written differently. We got an F sharp, A sharp, and an E. The A sharp can also be thought of as a B flat. And if we add the C, all of those notes in the F sharp chord with the sharp 11, that C, are the same notes as our C with adding the F sharp. They're the same chord. So these are a direct substitution. So now that we're armed with that knowledge that we can have the same chord in two very different locations, this opens up a lot of flexibility as far as making chromatic movements that are often really very difficult in the left hand. Let's go to the chords of Pent-Up House that I opened the video with, and look at those. I've got in the chart, I've got an A minor going to an A flat 7. That's really a rough jump because I'm going all the way down to A flat 7. And making that move, there's so much error in there, and there's so much room for error because you really have to move fast and you have to find the right spot. It's tough. So let's think about what we were just discussing. Now, if we take instead of going to the A flat 7, what's the tritone of A flat? And we go, it's a D. It's a D natural. And here we are in the A minor. If we only had to go to a D, that would be, it's right next door. It's great. Can we, if we take the D and add the tritone, now all of a sudden we've got an A flat dominant with a sharp 11 in it. And for this particular song, it sounds great. If I had to do that with the way it was written, with just an A flat 7, I probably could never get any great speed out of that. I mean, if one worked really hard. There's so much room for error because it's just too much real estate to go back and forth on the left hand that way. But here, it's a piece of cake. It's really easy. So that's something to look at. If you've got something that's moving chromatically and you're doing a jazz tune, explore whether the chord, the tritone away, is that going to lay easier, and can you grab the bass note and make that work a lot easier for you. So something you can put in practice all the time in your jazz studies. Just as an aside, when you get to playing around with tritones, you'll notice I invariably and sometimes mistakenly grab a tritone because they're so fun to play. They just sound great to my ear. But you'll notice that if you start coupling those tritones with using both bass notes, it's a little thick, but you'll notice that it sounds chromatic. A lot of things start coming out chromatic. I mean, if you run through the circle of fifths in the left hand, it sounds like the circle of fifths. As you go down in the bass rows, if you add the tritone with the root bass, and you do the same thing, it sounds chromatic. The brain translates as this is a descending chromatic line, even though we're doing fifths. It definitely sounds chromatic, and you can also ascend chromatically. So hopefully this will open up all kind of avenues for any time you hit someplace where you have to make a chromatic move. You can grab the tritone that's related to that chord and use that for your seventh chord, and then add the root that you need. Okay, I hope that helps you a little bit.